Hello everyone, welcome to my channel English Literature Made Easy with Saswati. In today's video, I will talk about two important modernist poets. They are W.B. Yeats and T.S. Eliot. And if you are a student of English literature, then you cannot afford to miss these two important modernist poets. So let's start the video. Modernist poetry refers to poetry written in Europe and North America between 1890 and 1950, following the tradition of modernist literature. If you want to know more about modernist literature or literary modernism, then you can check my previous video wherein I have discussed in detail about modernist literature and literary modernism, and I will give you the link in the description box below. Now let's look at the two important modernist poets, and first I will begin with W.B. Yeats. William Butler Yeats, which was his full name, is one of the greatest modernist poets in the English language. Born in Dublin, Ireland in 1865 and died in 1939 in France, Yeats was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1923. He was greatly influenced by Arthur Symons' book, The Symbolist Movement in Poetry. Through this book, Yeats was introduced to some of the major French experimental symbolist poets such as Arthur Rimbaud, Paul Verlaine, Jules Laforgue, and Stephen Mallarmé. Modernist poetry is said to have begun with the French symbolist movement and ends around the period of the Second World War. Influenced by the symbolism of these poets and the political and the literary developments of the time, Yeats's poetry initiated the modernist train in the early 20th century. His poem, The Second Coming, is considered as a major work of modernist poetry. It was first printed in the magazine The Dial. The Dial served as an important outlet for modernist literature in English. Written in 1919, in the aftermath of the First World War, Yeats's poem The Second Coming describes the atmosphere of post-war Europe. The first stanza of the poem describes a world full of chaos, confusion, and moral degradation that has pushed humanity towards its apocalypse. Let me read the first stanza of the poem. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the wars are full of passionate intensity. So this is the first stanza of Yeats's poem, The Second Coming, where he uses the symbol of the gyre to talk about the forces of history. Each new age reaches its climax, it falls apart, and a new age emerges. So Yeats's gyre talks about the cyclical movement of history. Against this chaotic world, the second stanza is much longer, and it talks about the speaker having a vision of the future. In this vision, the Christian prophecy of the second coming of Jesus Christ is replaced by the arrival of a new grotesque beast in the face of violence and destruction that humans have created in the First World War. Jesus Christ does not appear as a savior in the world full of chaos and catastrophe, rather a grotesque beast with a man's head and a lion's body is coming to life, presenting a nightmarish apocalyptic scenario. The poem shows that the idea of the supposed progress of humanity is an illusion, as the First World War proved that modern human beings are capable of causing their own destruction, and it is their own action that has woken up the beast. Yeats was fascinated by Irish legends, mythology, folklore, occultism, spiritualism, mysticism from a very early age, and his poetry bear the mark of these influences. In the poem Byzantium and Sailing to Byzantium, which are called Byzantium poems together, Yeats uses the city Byzantium as a symbol of utopia and artistic excellence. Byzantium was an ancient Greek city of mesmerizing architecture. Later, it was occupied by the Romans, who called it Constantinople. And during the time when Yeats was writing the poem, the city had already started to be called Istanbul. But Yeats chose the older name Byzantium to talk about it as a place of perfection, unaffected by time and civilization. Geographically, Byzantium or modern-day Istanbul is on the connecting point of the east and the west. Yeats's poem Sailing to Byzantium talks about a metaphorical journey rejecting the ethos of the Western civilization and moving towards the East. The world represented by Byzantine art is in complete contrast to the world of sensuality seen in modern urban life. For Yeats, Byzantium was an utopia, unaffected by physicality and the cycle of birth and death. In reality, Byzantium had ceased to exist. It exists only in Yeats's imagination. Yeats's Byzantium represents everything that the modern age and time has lost in its senseless pursuit of material and physical pleasure. The second important modernist poet that I am going to talk about is T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot's full name is Thomas Stearns Eliot, and he is considered as a central figure in English modernist poetry. He was born in 1888 and died in 1965. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1948. Eliot's poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, popularly known as Prufrock, is considered as a masterpiece of modernist poetry. Besides Prufrock, The Wasteland and The Hollow Man are two other notable modernist poems written by Eliot. The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock was the first professionally published poem by Eliot, and it was published at the instigation of fellow poet Ezra Pound. It was first published in the June 1915 issue of Poetry, a magazine of verse. There is no specific moment when modernist poetry began, but the opening lines of The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock indicated the beginning of a new era in English poetry. Please pay attention to the opening lines of the poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. In the essay Prufrock's Dilemma, American poet John Berryman writes, "With this line, modern poetry begins, and that line is like a patient etherized upon a table." You know that modernist literature is a reaction against 19th century romanticism in the aftermath of the First World War. Here, the romantic view of nature is thwarted when evening is compared with a patient about to be operated. The title of the poem says it is a love song, but the irony is the reader is presented with a speaker who looks at the evening sky and compares it to an anesthetized patient about to be operated. So if you were expecting a love poem in the traditional sense, immediately your expectation is shattered. When the speaker says in the opening line, "Let us go then, you and I," we as readers presume that Prufrock is talking to us. But as we read the poem, it becomes apparent that Prufrock is actually talking to his other self, as he is torn between two personas that are completely opposite to each other. Throughout the poem, we find Prufrock moving between two different emotions. On one hand, he longs for love and companionship. He has all the romantic desires at heart, and he wants to propose his love to a lady. But on the other hand, he is anxious. He is an anxious realist actually, who is constantly haunted by thoughts of the outcome of being rejected for his physical appearance and dressing style, because he is aware of his growing age. Hence, he does not do anything. He chooses inaction over action for fear of being rejected, and then regrets for his unattained physical and romantic love. And the result is we get the complex persona of Prufrock, who is an embodiment of split personality, characterized by the separation of head and heart. In his case, there is a will to make a romantic proposal to the lady, but then every time that will is negated by too much worry and procrastination. Modernist literature stressed on themes of alienation and isolation, and in the poem The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, which is written in a dramatic monologue, the very middle-aged speaker talks about his inner self, his anxieties, frustrations, and thereby indicates what makes him feel alienated from the world. Eliot uses the stream of consciousness technique to narrate Prufrock's inner life experiences. Eliot's Prufrock represents the frustration and disillusionment of the modern individual through his physical and intellectual inertia. He is further plagued by a sense of getting old. He is worried about his thinning hair and impending death, and all these experiences speak for the frustrations, worries, and fears of the modern human being. Now let's look at Eliot's poem, The Wasteland. The Wasteland was published in 1922 and it is considered as the representative poem of the modernist canon for its symbolic significance and experimentation in terms of poetic form and technique. Eliot dedicated the poem to fellow poet Ezra Pound and wrote it as For Ezra Pound, Il Migilor Febro, which can be translated as For Ezra Pound, the better craftsman. The original manuscript of the poem was much longer and it was Ezra Pound who edited the poem, and that is how we have the much shortened and condensed form of the poem. The Wasteland is 434 lines long and it is written in 5 sections. The first is The Burial of the Dead, the second is A Game of Chess, the third is The Fire Sermon, the fourth is Death by Water, and the fifth and the last section is What the Thunder Said. There are multiple voices speaking together in the Wasteland that creates a polyphony of modern urban life. Throughout the poem, Eliot constantly alludes to and quotes from other poets such as Dante, Homer, Ovid, Baudelaire, Shakespeare, and he also incorporates phrases from different foreign languages such as Latin, Greek, Italian, German, French, and Sanskrit. These allusions and quotations talk about a lost tradition and present the poem as a collage of literary and cultural fragments from a past that has already disappeared. The fragmentary structure of the poem highlights how the old certainties that had held the pre-war Western society together has drastically declined. It also shows a kind of experimentation in terms of the form of modernist literature and how it deviates from traditional literature. Following the modernist style of James Joyce's novel Ulysses, The Wasteland follows a disjointed structure in which Eliot jumps from one voice or image to another without even telling the reader of these abrupt shifts. The original title of the poem was He Do the Police in different voices, but later Eliot chose the title The Wasteland following Jessie L. Weston's book based on the Holy Grail legend called From Ritual to Romance. As Eliot later said, not only the title but much of the symbolism and subject matter of the poem is also based on this book From Ritual to Romance by Weston. The title of the poem, The Wasteland, refers to how the modern Western society and culture has become a wasteland due to the physical and spiritual degradation following the chaos and horror of the First World War. Eliot uses the Fisher King and the Holy Grail legend in the Arthurian cycle to show that modern Western civilization is sterile and in need of healing. But while the legendary Fisher King's wasteland hopes for redemption through the healing of his impotency, Eliot's wasteland does not seem to have any such hopes. The poem gives us a picture of the city London that is grim, abounding in physical, moral and spiritual decay, symbolized by rats, garbage and ghosts of the dead. So as the last resort, Eliot looks to the east and seeks refuge in the ancient Indian philosophy of Datta, Dayadham, Damyata. These 3 Sanskrit words are from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and interestingly these are the last words in the poem The Wasteland, along with the sacred chant Shanti repeated 3 times, which suggests universal peace and inner peace. The word Datta means giving, Dayadham means be sympathetic, and Damyata means control yourselves. In the ancient Hindu text Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Prajapati Brahma, or the creator, is asked by gods, men and demons for advice, and he utters the word Da 3 times. It means Datta, Dayadham, Damyata. So Lord Brahma advised that giving, compassion and self-control should be the 3 guiding principles of all creatures, and Eliot believes that these words of the heavenly voice of the thunder, Da, 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 which means Datta, Dayadham, Damyata, from the last section of the poem, What the Thunder Said, is the only hope amidst the despair of the post-war society. In a letter to Bertrand Russell, Eliot described the last part of the poem as the best, as it justifies the whole poem. It offers a spiritual prescription for a new dawn, which is rooted in the ancient Vedic Indian philosophy. That's all for today. I will see you soon in another video with a brand new topic. But before that, please like it, share it and subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you receive all the updates regarding my upcoming videos. And please follow me on Instagram and my Facebook page English Literature Made Easy with Saswati to get literary updates and quizzes every day. So take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.